start small and start with a minimal viable product. It doesn't have to be perfect when you launch it. And it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Just even if you have to do it manually, to see if you can get some traction and some interest and an audience, then you're on to something. I feel like there's so much talk today about these startups, and you've got to raise all this money, and you've got to, hire this team and build out this product. And I would just say smart, start really small and just think hyper local to get it started. And then you can grow from there. There's always going to be iteration, always.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7- and 8-figure businesses, as well as CEO and founder of Miller IP Law, where we focus on helping startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. And if you ever need help on yours, feel free to go to strategymeeting.com, and we're always here to help. Now, today we have another great guest on the podcast, Amy Schick. And to give you a bit of a background on Amy, so she said that she, in her words, she's a military spouse. Bit makes it a bit hard when you're moving around all the time, with the military to maintain a career. But nonetheless, started a career as a paralegal for an internet company, and then they also got into real estate a bit. Kind of each place that they moved around, bought a house, kind of used that as a source of rental income and an investment, and then started to get a lot of questions on kind of how do you do this, how you've been successful, how have you managed it, and decided to create a bit of a business around that. So did that for a period of time, did some mergers, good things, bad things about mergers, and talk a little bit about that. And then her sister, I think, approached her on about a medical device that she created. So got into medical sales for a period of time. We had to exit that and talk a little bit about what that exit might look like and how that went, and then spent some time enjoying the family, and then after that got into a bit of the business, which is what she's doing now, along with continuing to do rental properties. So with that much as a quick introduction, welcome on the podcast, Amy.
Thank you so much, Devin. I appreciate having this conversation with you.
Absolutely. Glad to have you on. So with that, I gave kind of that quick run through of, your journey, but let's go back in time a bit, kind of starting out as a military spouse, kind of what you were doing and kind of what your journey is. And let's chat from there.
So I left a really great job in San Francisco as a corporate paralegal when my husband commissioned into the Army. For the first time, I left California, the state I grew up in, and moved to Georgia, which was quite a culture shock. But then as we also sold our first house that we lived in California. And we realized that the process wasn't as scary as people made it sound to be, right? People would say, oh, buying a house is one of the biggest things you do in your life. And it was a big deal, like the first time. And then we thought, oh, this really isn't that difficult to buy and sell properties. So once we got to Georgia, we were there temporarily, and then we moved to Washington and we bought a house. Now in the Army, based on my husband's job, we move like we're running from the law. So we spend on average 2 years at each location, which is not a lot of time. However, we thought, how can we take this lifestyle and create a way to, basically build wealth around it? And so we came up with a plan of buying a home at each duty station, and then when we left, turning it into a rental property and then hanging on to it. So that's what we did for years. So we have owned homes in Washington, Louisiana, Georgia, Florida, California, and now again in Washington. So it's been an interesting journey, but a lot of military families don't purchase, right? Because they're here for a limited amount of time. So then when word got out that this is what I was doing, and then I also had a friend that was doing basically a similar process, people started asking lots of questions. So we got together and we decided, let's write a book, right? And just like with any idea, right, there's typically a need behind it. And instead of having one-on-one conversations, we thought, well, we could write a book explaining what we do and why we do it and how other people could do it. So But this is the thing that's so beautiful about like partnering with someone, and then also just being really flexible in mind, is that that idea to create a book um, turned into 2 books. And we self-published them online, so they're digital books to keep costs down.
Mm,
But originally we thought if we create this book, then people will know how to buy real estate. But then we thought, but we're only giving them part of the solution. So we thought now we need to tell them how to be a successful landlord, right? So then that one book turned into 2.
mm,
And then as we were writing the second book, we realized, these families are buying homes. We're teaching them how to buy homes. We're teaching them how to rent homes, but they're going to be leaving again. And how are they going to successfully rent these homes when they're not available? So that's when the idea for a scout network came about. And that was basically to use our community of military spouses all over the country to be that person that's there and available to either take updated photos or to unlock a house to get
mm,
appliances delivered when the house is vacant, um, to do a sight unseen tour for somebody. So then we started thinking of all these ways that military spouses could help other military families. So
mm.
that's how we created the Scout Network. So, which is really cool because we didn't set out to create that, right? And that's the part about being very flexible in your mind, is that when you start to build something, you start to really think about it. Byproducts of that original build and idea start to form. And they may not be byproducts that you want to necessarily pursue or, I guess, kind of develop, at that time, but definitely keep a journal and keep those ideas, because you never know when you want to circle back and where
Mm.
those ideas may be viable products or services that you could offer down the road as you build out a business. So I thought that was really cool, that it just kind of happened spontaneous like that for us. And I feel like most businesses have byproducts, but you really kind of have to find them and look for them at times. So once we developed the Scout Network, um, I was actually moving from Georgia to Alaska, which is
Mm.
like you couldn't get any further, right, in the United States.
So
Um,
maybe one quick question kind of on
yeah,
that. So you're building the scout network, you had the other person that you're kind of working on it with, you guys are partners. Did you
yes,
guys do that, kind of remotely before Zoom was cool, so to speak? Because you guys are both, I assume during this period of time, still moving around with the military and that.
yes.
So are you guys at the same location? You're doing it remotely. You're kind of, how did you run that when you guys are moving
Yes.
around and trying to do all of that?
Oh, absolutely. So at the time, Lauren, who is my friend, obviously former business partner and really business mentor still today, we were both at the same location in Georgia. So
Mm,
what we were doing is we just created a plan for writing, and we would wake up at 5 a.m. and we would call each other to keep each other accountable. Are you up? Right.
mm,
And then we would just plan out sections that we were going to write on in the book. And she would take sections, I would take sections, and it really depended on our experience and our strengths and our weaknesses, what we wrote on.
mm,
And then we got together for several editing sessions. And then we also reached out to other friends to edit the book for us,
mm,
actually books for us,
mm,
which was super helpful. And at this point, we hadn't spent any money. It was just time. But since I had a legal background and she had a tech background, she was doing all the tech to self-publish us and to create like a social media campaign, and then also like a website platform where they could purchase the books. And then I was also doing the legal side, which was forming an LLC and getting our business licenses, setting up like an accounting software, things like
mm,
that. So we definitely were capitalizing on each other's strengths for sure. Once I moved to Alaska, then and she was still in Georgia, then absolutely. And this was back in 2014. So we started working remotely. And most of the time, we would just have our morning meeting and we would connect, and then we would just kind of share what we were working on or what progress we had. And then we would go our separate ways for the rest of the day and work on our part of the project. And then we would come back together or, shoot each other a text. And so it was constant contact, but we also tried to be very supportive of each other's time, because now we had a 4-hour difference in time zone. So that created a little bit of a challenge, but really not too much. We just kind of both worked on things when we could, and really set up times to deliver projects to each other. And it worked out really well. In the beginning, there's not a lot of traction, right? And whenever you create a new service, there will be people who say they love it, and then there'll be people who downright hate it and bash it, and come to you with different perspectives on and opinions on their product. And especially with social media, people really feel free to share what they really feel about your product. So we really listened to that, and we really listened to what people loved about it, and we listened to what people didn't like about it. And we didn't pivot just because people had negative things to say. We knew that we weren't going to please everyone, and that there were going to be some people that just didn't care for our service.
So now maybe just diving in just a bit. So you did that, so you figured that out. You did that for, a period of time. And then I think that you guys you were approached by another company and looking at doing a merger and kind of getting together with the founders. Was that kind of the next step or the next phase of the business?
Yeah. So Lauren got into contact with another company that was young and new. And it was ran by 2 veterans. But what they did is they had a realtor referral service, and they referred military families to realtors who were veterans, military spouses, so that they would understand the lifestyle and understand what military families needed when they were moving. So Lauren started that conversation and that relationship with them. And then as we just talked more and more about what they were offering and what we were offering, that's when they approached us with acquiring our business, which is super difficult when you don't have you don't have a lot of assets, you don't have a lot of income, and basically you're trying to negotiate what is a fair price for your business without hard numbers, right? And this is what I learned in the process. Nobody has the formula for it, right? So it is, if they say they have a formula, I would be very leery, because unless you have those data metrics in revenue or traction, they're basically buying your potential. And also what they really want is they want the team that founded your business. So they really saw what Lauren and I built, they liked what we built, and they really also wanted us on their team. So it's a little bit of both, right? They want the ingenuity, they want the work ethic, they do want the audience that you've built, they do want your products and services, but they really do look at having those founders on their team as well. So
now you guys merged together, and with all of that as an understanding, you got into the relationship and kind of, how did that go? Was it a good relationship, bad relationship? Did you last around, or what did that look like as it turned out?
Yeah, so I would definitely recommend, based on my experience, and I'll get into that a little bit more, forming a partnership with someone that you don't know well is something that should not be taken lightly. And it's something that you really need to get to know those people before you, lack of a better term, jump in bed with them, because a business partnership is a very intimate relationship. You're going to disagree. You're going to have flat out arguments over things. There's going to be So you really want to sit down and get to know those people, get to know what their vision is for the business, what your vision is for the business, and then you want to really create a partnership agreement. I highly, highly recommend that because that's going to create parameters when the unknowns pop up, right?
So now taking that, and I think that's great advice. Now taking
Yeah.
it kind of to your own journey, how did that
Yeah.
work with your merger and your
So
partnership?
we didn't really do that, right? And this is where like the lessons learned. I had certain expectations that, I would have a certain place as a founding team member within that business and that I would be making executive decisions and I would really be, I guess, shaping the development of the business as a whole. But once we got into it, I kind of got funneled into continuing to develop the Scout Network, which was great. That was my baby. But I felt like I was just kind of pushed off to the side as far as major business decisions go. And I really didn't like the fact that like I did not feel involved in major business decisions as far as, investment money, as far as the direction we were going as a business, the things we were focusing on. And once you kind of get pigeonholed, it's really hard to then, I guess, kind of reestablish that role as like, okay, I really want to be a part of these bigger conversations. So that was a mistake that I made, that I would highly recommend that if you are thinking about partnering, just really get to know that person, really get to know what your relationship is going to look like and put that in writing before you enter that relationship. So, I mean, it was fine at the time, but looking back, of course, hindsight is always 2020.
So kind of just continuing on your journey, just so we can, make sure to
Sure.
give its full due. So
Yeah.
did the merger, you learned the lessons. It didn't necessarily work out exactly how you'd want. So you said, okay, after sticking around for a period of time, decided to move on. And I think that's when you kind of got in partnership or worked with your sister for a period of time on some medical devices. Is that right?
Yes. So what happened was I was continuing to work on it and build the Scout Network, which I really did enjoy doing, and it was, my baby. And then my sister approached me. And so she had developed a product. So she was a surgical tech in labor and delivery. And she's, of course, when you are in a certain work environment, you see how things are supposed to work, and then you also see how things could work better. So what was happening was there was an increase in babies being dropped or falling out of mom's arms when moms were breastfeeding them and then like falling asleep in the hospital. And so she thought this is a huge problem and people don't seem to be addressing this and they don't seem to be sounding alarms as to this problem, right? It's a huge risk for moms and for babies. So she set out to develop a wrap that wrapped around mom. So imagine a tube top that zips on the side. And then baby would securely lay skin to skin on mom's chest during that time. So if mom was kind of propped up in the bed, she could have baby on her chest, secured by this wrap. And then if mom needed to stand up and walk around, there was an additional sling that came up and over your shoulder. And then that would give added support if you were walking around with baby. And that would optimize the amount of time that moms and babies were skin to skin, which is what's recommended, which I thought the product was brilliant. And it is a brilliant product. The lesson that I learned in this particular situation, which obviously you can tell I've learned a lot of lessons through like failure or just not knowing, was that I thought the product would be a perfect product to sell as an e-commerce product directly to consumers, directly to moms, or to other people to gift for moms. Where my sister felt that no, this is a product that should be supplied to moms from the hospitals. So I felt like and this is just being naive, and, kind of jumping before doing enough due diligence, was she knew the product, she knew the problem and the problem set and how to solve the problem, which was brilliant. But the part that she didn't have experience with is, how do you sell a product to hospitals? So trying to figure out how to sell a product to a hospital turned into a massive amount of work that we just were not prepared for, and also frankly didn't have the money for.
Mm.
And so it's, I ultimately left because our, I guess kind of ideas as to how to best market and sell this product, we started to drift apart in those ideas, more and more, to the point where it was a conflict. There wasn't a lot of traction. Then we were trying to pivot to ambulances and sell the product to ambulances for safe transport.
So
And
maybe so, and
yeah,
maybe to summarize that, so that differences of opinion, kind of the ways that you would necessarily approach it, or how you'd market the business, and so ended up, I think when we chatted before, ended up walking away, or just deciding that
yeah,
that wasn't going, the relationship with the business and everything wasn't the best avenue to take the business, so kind of walked away. And then I think you said you continued to be in the military and move. So now bringing us up to kind of where you're at today, tell us a little bit about what you're doing today and kind of how you landed on that.
yes. So we've continued to invest in real estate along the way. So we actually have identified a property that we're going to buy for a rental here in Washington. So we try to maximize our time. So I've continued to do that. And then just I've been continuing to explore other like business concepts that I would love to build out.
Hmm.
And then how can I build those out? And again, build them out in a bootstrapped way where I can use online resources to create a minimal viable product to test it out. So what I look for in a business is, what problem can I solve? So while I'm still continuing to do real estate and acquire properties and turn those into rentals, because that's something that I know, it's something
Hmm.
that I feel like can kind of be on autopilot, if that makes sense. While I work on other business concepts, to build out and explore, how can I build these out and how can I test them in the market. So I go back to, what problems can I solve? And I look at, what problems am I facing?
Mm.
So one of the problems that I guess my family faced was, 2 years ago, my daughter was applying for colleges. And as a military brat, when you've moved around and you've gone to 10 schools in your 12 year process, and then you've had 3 high schools, it's really hard to maintain those GPAs and really show these colleges how you shine as an individual when you don't have the data metrics of grades and SAT or ACT scores. So I what I'm working on now is building out a platform through a no code service, to create an online portfolio for students to really show what they have done, the
Mm.
challenges that they've overcome, the character that they've developed, the grit that they've developed through an online portfolio, that could be, quickly and easily viewed. And they could add photos and video and include their story of
Mm.
why they should be at that college and why they can be successful at that college. Because it's not just students that have 4.0s and have 34s on ACT scores and have done all these great sports and have had all these great things. Grit and determination are built in other ways. There are students who um, have had to help raise their siblings and have had to work part-time to
Mhm.
help pay for bills.
So
And
maybe just
that builds trust.
kind of with that. So that brings us
Yeah.
up to where we're at today and kind of what you guys are working on.
Yeah.
And there's always more things to chat on than we're ever going to have time to
Yeah.
chat. But I always want to save room for the last couple questions I ask at the end
Yes.
of each podcast. So maybe we'll jump to those now and just talk with those for a minute.
Sure.
So as along your journey, as you went through your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
I think the worst business decision I ever made was to uh, go into business with family. And the reason why is because those family relationships are really important. And when things like business and equity and money are on the line,
Hmm.
it's just not worth ruining a family relationship over business. So I would say that that is the worst business decision I have. And there are many people that are successful at it, going into business with family and generational businesses, and that's fabulous. But I just think that there's a difference between parents bringing children up in a business versus siblings joining together to start a business. So
Yeah, and,
I
and I
would say
think
that,
that there's some truth to that in the sense that there's a different dynamic between having a good relationship with family or doing that versus on the business side. And when you put those together, it can certainly add that additional layer of stress and additional, complexity to the relationship. Some people it works well together, others it just is, it strains the relationship too much. So
yes, yes.
now as we jump on to the second question, which
Mhm.
is if you're talking to someone that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
I think the one piece I would advise that I would give them is start small and start with a minimal viable product. It doesn't have to be perfect when you launch it, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Just even if you have to do it manually to see if you can get some traction and some interest and an audience, then you're on to something. I feel like there's so much talk today about these startups, and you've got to raise all this money and you've got to, hire this team and build out this product. And I would just say smart, start really small and just think hyper local to get it started. And then you can grow from there. There's always going to be iteration, always.
No, and I like that. And I think that, there's certainly a lot of wisdom. Figure out a way to get started, get it going, whether or not it's you have a lot of money, bootstrap it, whatever. I think the biggest thing is to take that step and get it started. Well,
Yes.
as people, and just give people a heads up, we are going to do the bonus question and talk a little
Mhm.
bit about intellectual property after the main episode. So if you want to stay tuned, and you can hear that is a little bit of discussion. But otherwise, if you're getting ready to tune out, before they do, if people want to find out more about kind of your businesses, what you have going on, connect up to you, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be an customer, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above. What's the best way to connect up or find out more?
That would be just to find me on LinkedIn, Amy Schick, at LinkedIn, or just email me. I'm all about the just email connection. That's the other thing I've learned. Just reach out to people. So I totally welcome people reaching out to me just on my email, and that's amy.schick@gmail.com. It's the best email to reach me at.
Well, awesome. Well, I definitely encourage people to reach out, find out more, and utilize the knowledge you've gained on a lot of different areas. Well, as we wrap up, first of all, and we'll get to the bonus question, but thank you for coming on the podcast, and for all those listeners. If you have your own journey to tell and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, feel free to go to inventiveguest.com. Apply to be on the show. Also, if you're a listener, make sure to click subscribe so you get notifications as all our awesome episodes come out, as well as leave us a review so new people can find us. Last but not least, if you ever need help with patents and trademarks, just go to strategymeeting.com and sign up to be a guest on the podcast. Or sorry, not or sign up to be or to chat for a bit on your patents and trademarks. So with that, now that as we've wrapped up the normal portion of the episode, we'll dive right back into the bonus question, which is for you to, what would be, and you get to turn the tables a little bit in the sense I'm usually the one that asks questions, but now you get to ask me a question, which is what is your top intellectual property question?
So my top intellectual property question has to do with timing, and how aggressive you should be in your IP portfolio. So I
Mm,
know that's a big question and it's a lot to unpack. So my question is, there's a lot that pertains to your IP, right? Domain names, trademarks, patents,
mm.
so copyrights. So my question is when you're beginning and you don't have a lot of money, you don't have a lot of resources, what is the most important intellectual property to protect by trademark or patent? And then at what time in the business journey
Mm.
do you pursue that?
Yeah, so there's a few things to unpack. I'll give you kind of the shorter form answer to it. Really, when I look or whenever you're looking at intellectual property, I would first say what is the core of the value of your business? Meaning, is it your brand, and are you building a business? It's really a great brand. Meaning, you didn't create a great widget; it's not a product, but it's a great brand. And a lot of companies do that. You think of Pepsi, Coke, M&M, Starbucks, Apple. All of those have great brands, and that's where a lot of their value is. Vice versa, are you creating a brand? Are you creating a new widget or a new product or a new invention? And that's where the value of your product is, because it's really going to flavor where you focus a lot of your, and sometimes it's all any or all the above, right? Sometimes if you're an Apple, you create great products, you also create a great brand, so you may have both of those aspects. But when you're kind of trying to decide where do I focus intellectual property if I need it, think about where the value of the business is. And maybe it's, if it's, creating great inventions, then you focus more on patents. If it's creating a great brand and a great reputation, you may focus more on trademarks. If you're creating a book or you're creating something that's more in creative nature, a book, a movie, a TV show, or a sculpture or painting, then it's going to be in copyright. So I'd say the first thing you do is to figure out where the value of your business is and what you'd want to protect. And then kind of with that in mind, you're going to then go to, okay, what do I want to protect and how quickly do I need to protect it? So on a patent, simple answer is the maximum, once you start putting it out in the public, you have a year within which you can file a patent on it. Meaning once it's out in
Okay.
the public, if you don't file within a year, you're basically donating to the public. You're no longer able to pursue. You've missed your window. On a
Oh,
trademark,
okay.
that's a bit more of an open-ended question, in the sense that trademarks, you don't have a specific window. But what you don't want to do is, if your intention is to build a big brand, you don't want somebody else to come along, get that trademark, or start using that name and register it before you do, such that as you're building that, you're going to, if somebody else gets a trademark first, it's going to hurt your business. So both of them are generally, the general question is figure out where the value of their business is. Earlier on is a better, and then probably beyond that for a specific business, you're better to even go talk with an attorney. We offer strategy meetings. You can tell by the podcast, go to strategymeeting.com. But whether it's us or somebody else, you're really better at that point to now go down, sit with an attorney, strategize more specifically with your businesses to exactly what that timing might look like. So with that as the answer to your top question, we're going to wrap up the podcast there. It's been fun to have you on the podcast, Amy. It's been a pleasure, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Yes, thank you so much, Devin. I appreciate it.